What's up, my friends? Welcome into the studio. I'm Andy. Today we're talking about this 1979 vintage MINIMOog synthesizer. So let's make some sounds, and then we'll get into it. So yeah, this is not a reissue. This is vintage, revision 3 of the Model D. And I just got it. I've had it for about a week. This was gifted to me from an old friend and mentor. And frankly, I'm kind of still in shock. Like, it's just been sinking in. So what we're going to do in this video is just kind of run through, like, you know, a brief introduction to this MINIMOog. So I should tell you, I have never been a synth guy per se. I have been into synth music since I was very little. I had an uncle that took me around on road trips all the time and always played like old classic like ELO stuff and Yes and Rush and Jean-Michel Jarre, if that's how you pronounce that. So like, which is straight synth music. And so I've always been way into synths. If you have been here to the channel before, you know me as a guitar player. And it's worth noting, when I graduated high school and went to college, I was burnt out on guitar. I straight up sold this massive rack system of my guitar system to buy a Korg Brain, just the brain of a keyboard, because I like yearned for that. I found it extremely lacking. You can't make keyboard sounds and keyboard music on a thing with a display that's digital this big. Like, it wasn't working at all for me. So I didn't fool with it ever again until now. But I did. I have a friend, this guy M Peck. Look him up on SoundCloud. He's totally amazing. M-Peck, and he's into synth. It's like one of my best friends since forever. And dude is into real synths, man. And so I got to get my hands on some synths and actually play with them. I was like, this is super interesting. This is a thing I could get into. But I never did because, like, I'm interested in other things, and I never felt like putting the money into it. So I didn't. And then along comes this thing, right? Totally out of the blue, and like, boom! I have my dream synth. This is, for me, the holy grail. Absolutely. And so a lot of this is going to just be like, you know, and I'm going to make lots of videos about this thing, dude, don't worry. But like, because I want to know everything about it. So follow along. If you are not, you know, someone who like me, who's like always loved synths, but never really knew about like what it is, how it works, and how to just like, I want this sound, and there it is. I want to be that guy. Come along on my journey. We're gonna all be those guys. Yes. Like I said, I've always been into synths. So of course I've had all the Arturia, like, you know, Moog synths since they started making them, and I've never ever like had like the like yearning to like just like play the thing as an instrument. I've never had that at all until this came in the other day, and I instantly like wanted to just play it. Right? Because like, it's expressive. Like, it's super duper fun. So like, let's play a little. I'll show you what I mean. You can like add vibrato in different things. Now, keep in mind, I'm not a keyboard player. I might mess up. You know? This is all this Moog. get the idea. So like, I just totally want to play this thing all the time. All right, so let's get into it from the get-go. What is a synthesizer? Like, I didn't know. I'm totally addicted now. You should go watch like some documentaries that are all over YouTube about like Bob Moog and how he like invented these things and stuff. But so let's talk about it. This is not this is analog synthesis. It's taking an electrical signal and using it with an oscillator to basically generate a waveform. And that waveform, we can choose like what frequency it kind of runs at, the range, how low or high it is, and the type of waveform. So we have 3 oscillators, and that's like that's the core of what this thing is, you know, and it's really the core of most of like these style synthesizers. Just like basic synthesizers, because this isn't like the type of thing where you can like pull up a preset and like here's some strings or like here's a bongo. This is not at all. This only does like kind of one thing, and it's only monophonic, which means only one note can be played at a time. So you might think, wow, this is like, that's kind of limiting. Like what gives, dude? This is not at all like, it's very quiet. Like what gives? That's not very fun sounding at all. Like running a noise loop. That's not very flexible. I can't do a lot of things. And it's like, well, you realize really fast you can do a lot of things with this, right? It creates a lot of like really wonderful sounds. And so just by using, you know, the various knobs that are on here, and there's not that many, when you're a musician and you're playing an instrument, you learn pretty quick what knob you got to turn to like make something sound a little different. You know, like you do one thing and then you want to do it a little different. You know, this thing is an instrument that's designed to be played, and it makes it so easy to do those things, right? So let's get to section by section. So the first thing you got to do, you whip out this thing to play it some. And the first thing that you have to do, my nose is itchy, is tune it, right? Like any instrument, right? So we have oscillators, we have mixers, and I'll talk about that. And we have like things modifiers, things that we can change, you know, and modify the sound with. And so those things are sitting here, and you got this little nice A440, a thing to tune your instrument to. Right, a little test tone. So in the mixer section here, I just turned the second oscillator off. So I only want to hear the first one. I only want to hear one note, so I'll tune that. Right. So let's turn on the test tone. And over here to the left in this controller section, we have the controls that are for the controllers: tuning, the glide, which we'll talk about these a little bit later, and the modulation mix. So let's tune it. So you can hear the waves get wavy. And once you hear it get nice and long, you know, like that's where you want to be. And the tuning will drift on a synth like this that's old. The boards heat up, the oscillator boards, they'll heat up, they'll cool down, and as they do these things, the tuning changes. But so you've got one oscillator, oscillator 1 is in tune. Let's tune the next one. Oscillator 2, we'll turn it on. These have volume too, so you can mix 1 and 2. Using its frequency control here, we can tune it. We're all good. I don't know if that's the frequency control. That's what I was thinking of. If that's wrong, point it out. So now we have 2 oscillators in tune. And you're like, what about the third one? Do we tune it? And I'm like, good question. I don't ever use the third one. The third one's we use for what's called modulation. We want to take the sound that the first 2 are making and like kind of do things to it. And so it's an oscillator for the modulation. So it's going to generate a wave that's going to be in one of those shapeforms. It's going to be a sine wave, or it's going to be a bit of a notch wave, you know, that slope wave, or a sawtooth wave, and they're all going to make different sounds. Here's the roundest of the sine wave. Getting ramped, getting sawtoothed, getting square, different square, different square. So like square is your most synthy normally sound. That's glide when it goes in between one note to the other. That's this control here called glide, which is nice. Want to do that, you know, it's cool. But anyways, glide's a fun thing. Now you got your oscillators happening. You got one in tune. We said third one. Let's turn that on. See what we hear. So now we got 3 in. So that brings me to a good, so like that totally worked. We just tuned up the third oscillator. So we've got these controls over here are the range for each oscillator. So we get to set like if it's like low or high or whatever. And so those are divided 2 feet, 4 feet, 8 feet, 6 feet, or sorry, 8 feet, 16 and 32 feet. And then low, the last setting, which is like modulation and just, it's like a tick almost. So remember, we tuned, when I was tuning this third oscillator, I tuned it to the A pitch. It's super picky too, this oscillator. But notice, this is a cool ass feature. That A note on the third oscillator is staying at A, no matter what I play. So the reason that is because this oscillator, singularly, it's the only one that can do this. It has the option to have this oscillator 3 control. So I can have that stay like wherever I put it, or I can flip the switch and have it go with the note. So probably should retune it. And so instantly I'm trying to put vibrato on that, which is how you do that. And I forgot I was using the oscillator. Listen to that. Now, what if we want to do a little distortion? Oh, shit! Where'd you do that from, bro? See, that's what I mean. You just like, I want to just keep playing. I sit here and I just like make sounds and noises for the longest amount of time lately, it seems like. Which is ridiculous, right? But so, a unique thing about this, we can take this cord, plug it from the headphone output, which is nice that this thing has this. And I should say, it's probably for performance, because remember, this is a performance instrument. And there's also a switch where you can just switch the main output off. So what you do if you're playing live and you think you're out of tune, or you've gone out of tune, flip your main output off, put your headphones in, and just tune it up, and then boom, main output back on. Genius. They think of everything. But up here on the back, there's an external input jack. So if we take a patch cable and route the headphone out to the end of that, the external input volume is right here. And as we play, oh my God, that's insane. If you have good headphones or like you're listening on something with bass, you'll hear that. That is monster. Whoa. So again, you know how I said earlier, like, yeah, it only does like one thing and it's monophonic and you'll never ever get bored of it. Sorry. It's so fun, right? So that's, we have all three oscillators going. So you can definitely do some wild things like that. Now, normally this third oscillator, like I said, is used as a modulator. So we're going to set it all the way to low. Let's turn off the first two modulators in the mixer section so we can't hear them. Okay, do you hear that? That's the tick tick. There you go. I'll give you something you can hear better. As I turn this control here in the middle, the frequency, it's going to go slower. It's going to go faster. Now, that's going to, what you're hearing is you're hearing the cutoff frequency, right? That's what it's modulating. It's running an oscillator. Right now, it's running a square wave through that. So that means that it's oscillating what that filter is doing. And therefore, when we put the other two oscillators sounds on that, we get that. Now we do want to turn the third oscillator off so we don't hear it. And if we adjust our cutoff back here, we'll start to hear it. So this is the nice effect for, you know, turning back to a sine wave. This mod wheel here, that's what it's called, this wheel is the mod wheel, and that affects how much of that modulation is happening. All of it, none of it. So how cool is that? We're using this third oscillator to generate a waveform and then, you know, modulate the filter that's affecting the first two oscillators. Genius. Like, dude. And there's like so many things you can do with that. So you have this switch right here, oscillator modulation. You go, what's that about? If you flip that on, that means instead of this third oscillator affecting the frequency of the filter, instead of it affecting the filter thing, it's now going to affect the oscillators, the first two. You're like, oh, cool. So we play it. And when we move the mod wheel, that gets our, you know, turns on the modulation. So that's what we got happening. So you can do some crazy stuff. Like this here. So, and when you, again, this control thing, where before we had like the one note, the A note of oscillator 3 that stayed in A note all the way through, and then we flip the switch and it would move around. Well, with the filter stuff happening and the oscillator modulation switch flipped, what you then use the mod wheel for is to kind of tune what that modulation is coming out of that oscillator. I don't even know, you know, who knows how I'm saying this. It's almost confusing as hell. But so I know I can put it on this square wave here, right? And if this, if it's modulating the oscillators, then the square wave is just boom, 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 boom. So it's bringing me that sound on that bump. And so then I should be able to like tune that sound, and I can do that with the modulation, the frequency that's bumping. So that's how that works. So we go up like an octave, come back down to here. And then you've got classic 70s TV show Chips, the main like sound out of their theme song. Get this thing going fast. Got too much glide up in there. Total classic 70s sounds, but that's the magic of this oscillator. Oscillator 3 is straight dope magic. That's all there is to it, right? So turn off the craziness and the glide. Get this thing back to be doing something mellow. It's just so money. So next over, that's the oscillators, you know, like in a nutshell. And I should say, like, if you get like any kind of analog synthesizer, the more simple, the more likely it would have a very, very similar setup to this. This setup has been adopted over the years. I mean, because they were the first to do this, and they being Moog, Bob Moog. And really, everyone has been copying them ever since. There's supposed to be a really, really good Behringer, like some sort of D in the name, synth D, that competes with this really well. You know, so like that's always a good option. You like, hey, this stuff's cool, but I'm not going to drop $5,000 on, which is what one of these new is right now, the reissue ones, and because I wouldn't either. But that Behringer one is probably a lot less expensive. I don't know, I haven't checked. So the oscillators. After that magical oscillator stuff, we get a mixer section, which is super handy. Thanks, guys. So we can not only turn each one on and off. So we got first one, second one, third one. Of course, we don't usually listen to the third one because usually it's being used for like for oscillating modulation or something, and that's off. But in any event, it's there if we want it. Each one has its own level control, super convenient. You got your external input thing here too. So I leave that on and just go from volume. Dude, give me a break. I love distortion. In fact, the whole, like, I'm doing a record right now where it's all like, you know, distorted sounds, distorted synths, plasma sound, like plasma distortion on guitars here and there. Just like noisy stuff, bit destruction, chaos, but like using it in a very controlled manner to do melodic things and make real songs. And like, dude, listen to this. That is so cool. Anyways, then we've also got a noise generator. This thing will generate white or pink noise. White or pink noise. White noise covers the whole spectrum. It's just straight up shh. Let's turn it. Pink noise, on the other hand, is a narrower part of the spectrum. It's still going to let some of your highs out and some of your lows through. That's a snare drum all day. Between that last sound, dude, between this. Where'd it go? Oh, it won't come. It's interesting. So your noise is affected. That it's in series, I think, wired that way, one to the next, because if this is on, I get no noise. This would be like. Haha. Moog has done it again. This thing's so cool, dude. Jesus. I hadn't even fooled with noise yet. So that's that, you know, a very capable mixer section. Next up. Now here's where here's where the fun starts. All we've been doing is having fun. Jeez. Some of the magic, right? The Moog sound, that's the filter, right? And you're like, what's a filter? So this thing, it's labeled cutoff frequency. And that's how it's like, it's a filter. It's either going to let things through, or as we, like when it's wide open, probably need to turn some things on. When it's wide open, it's lighting up. It's not cutting anything. There's no filter at all. As we pull that back, we're cutting things off from the top. We're just kind of like closing down on the entire sound. turn the mod wheel up so you can hear what's going on. Now, of course, we're also modulating with the oscillator. If we don't want to do that, we can have this switch this way, and this oscillator won't affect the modulation. If you're wondering also, there's a delay that's after this keyboard. There's always a delay from the DAW that's on this synthesizer. It just sounds so good. Like when that's when the magic happens. Like add a little bit of chorus, maybe a little delay. That little bit is what gives it such magic. But I hadn't mentioned that anyways. So you got that frequency cutoff. Then the next over is filter emphasis. Filter emphasis is a lot like resonance, if you know resonance. So if we cut off like most of the frequencies and crank up that resonance, that's when we get that. So we won't fool with that too much because your ears. And then you have a kind of a mix control, it seems like. Now, for this effect, you can affect the attack, the decay, and the sustain, right? If you don't know what those are, you look them up. It's like kind of obvious, but like, you know, attack, how fast the note's going to sound, how long it's going to ring out, and when it does, at what level it's going to ring out at. That's fucking, that's the thing. So attack, decay, sustain is also right here in modifiers, or in loudness contour. I'm just reading things now. Loudness content, and that's like the overall sound. So generally your keyboard, if you get like some kind of a synth that's like an analog type modeled whatever after synth, you will have oscillators, often 3, because this model is what went through. Oscillators, a mixer, a filter section, a loudness section, and then the output, really. And that's the whole thing. You got glide, of course, which, as I said, no glide there if I turn it up. You know, that's what the glide does. Nice little effect. Decay, you have a switch for that too. So you could set your decay time, say, but then just turn it off real quick. Then when it on. Maybe you've got like something that you want to hold. Like having a sustain pedal, but not. And it's gonna hold this for like 8 seconds right there. You can set up to like whatever, 10 or 15 seconds. That's so cool. And it just nicely fades away. Or I turn that off. Pitch wheel works. I never used that, but super cool, that works. You have inputs for switches, foot switches for both of these. You can use switches. There's also inputs on the back for, I don't know, like more stuff. You can put you know, like a control pedal, like a volume type pedal to do a rocker pedal for some of these, like the cutoff frequency. Let's see. I haven't even looked. Oh yeah, filter, oscillator, external control inputs. Got loudness, filledness, and filter and oscillator. So that's interesting. Put all those on your feet. I wonder what that does for the performance. I don't know. But so that's plenty enough of me and this for today. Super cool. I'm so excited to have this thing. Like literally, this is life-changing gear right here, right? So if you've watched all this, thanks a bunch for watching. I would be remiss if I didn't mention I have a streamer school. I stream on Twitch. Come by Twitch, my Twitch channel. Always Andy on Twitch. Always Andy _. And play with this thing in real time. Come on by. Go to my streamer school, alwaysandy.co. Check that stuff out if it interests you. Got guitar packs at that same site. Go get you some big ass guitars. Loop packs, baby. I'm gonna play with this synth for like probably a few more hours. Cheers. What was that? You ever like do weird things at the end of your video when you're trying to say goodbye? Later.